Most of the time, the animal kingdom is based on a pretty concise balance of give and take. But sometimes, animals find themselves in trouble against the elements. Today, we're going to meet a predator that can't be killed, 2 stubborn moose, and some frozen fish you won't find in your grocer's freezer. Hold on tight, subscribe to the channel, and let's take a closer look at 10 frozen animals stuck in time. Number 10. Fearless frozen fox. One day, a young fox set about taking a walk across Germany's Danube River. Unfortunately, the ice was extremely thin, and he eventually fell through. So why did the fox cross the lake? Well, that remains unknown, but it was most likely that it either was curious or spotted prey on the other side. Whatever drove the fox onto the lake, once it had broken through the ice, there was very little hope. The fox swam for several meters, fighting for its life. But not long after it became frozen solid in the icy lake, it is unclear exactly how long the young fox remained frozen there. But on January 2nd of 2017, it was discovered by Franz Stelly, who cut it out of the ice using his chainsaw and displayed it outside his family's hotel as a cautionary tale about the dangers of ice, which I'm pretty sure it was exactly what the people wanted to see while checking in. Number 9. Fish sticks? In most cases, we get our frozen fish from the supermarket. That's because fish are pretty good at relocating as they notice temperature change. This is what made it particularly odd when Ingolf Christensen of Lovund in central Norway came across an entire school of frozen herring. Soon after Ingolf reported the finding, experts came around to figure out exactly what had happened. After all, it is incredibly unlikely for the herring to wind up in this situation. It is as if you or I chose to run into a burning building for no reason. One of the experts that analyzed the situation was a real slotty, who figured that the fish had been chased by a predator, but found themselves in shallow water that was too cool for the school. In order for this to have happened, the very unlucky minnow had to encounter a large predator, flee away from the warmer, deeper waters to cold, shallow waters, and all this had to happen in a day, and in an area where extremely cold winds were skimming the water. This was how the water froze quickly enough to capture the minnow. Before we go on, like this video, pop the subscribe button, and ring the notification bell right now, or the ghost in your closet will manifest itself tonight. Number 8. Elk. Unlike fish, moose seem to be extremely good at getting caught in ice. Like the tale of the frozen minnow, this tale takes us back to Norway, where in 2014, Inger Sjorberg was skating with her partner on Lake Gosmo in Valsøyfjord, where they spotted what they figured was a small chunk of land in the distance. So naturally, they went to check it out. But as they got closer, they realized that it wasn't land at all. It was the back of a large European elk that had literally become frozen in the lake. While elk are traditionally good swimmers, they do better in ideal conditions. For instance, they can tire easily if they have to struggle against thick ice closer to the shore, something that this elk likely fell victim to. Number 7. Moose Fight Club. In 2016, officials made a wild discovery in Unalakleet, Alaska, a small town along the Bering Sea. It was 2 hikers who initially spotted the incredible sight and reported it. Encased 8 inches of solid ice were 2 large adult male moose. But unlike our previous entry, they hadn't been trying to cross the water. Instead, they had wound up there during a fierce mating season battle. The 2 massive creatures still had their antlers locked in combat when they perished, however. It is worth noting that officials believed one of the moose died as a result of the fight, while the other was either too badly injured or frozen to escape. So he was simply too firmly locked onto his former rival to escape. An effort was soon undertaken to extract and preserve the animals. Still, the scene is pretty much one of a kind. Number 6. Moose 2. Even more moose? Yes, it would seem that the larger members of the deer family are really unfortunate when it comes to water. The last of the frozen deer on today's list is a moose from Siberia. However, this story is a little bit different. In fact, when this moose was discovered by employees of a surveying company, the team was flying overhead in a helicopter when it was spotted in a hole in the ice where the moose was struggling. Despite being on the clock, the team didn't hesitate to land. Once they were on the ground, they immediately got to work pulling the moose out of the water, and they took great care to help him warm up. Luckily, the team snapped lots of pictures, including the moose running off as they flew away. Number 5. Freezing your ass off. In 2013, ironically the same year Frozen hit theaters, a herd of donkeys was discovered in Turkey. The donkeys were left all alone on an abandoned farm, which hadn't been an issue at first when the weather was nice. But as the harsh winter took hold, the donkeys were subject to heartbreaking conditions. The people who discovered them phoned for help and shot devastating footage of the situation as they waited for help to arrive. In the video, howling winds can be heard whipping past, and the donkeys can be seen with long sheets of ice coming off of them, which have almost frozen them to the ground. One donkey tries to walk in the video, and it is clear that he can no longer move his back leg. The governor and mayor dispatched a rescue team of 6, and the donkeys were rescued, taken into a shelter, and treated. Fortunately, they have made full recoveries and wound up in much better living conditions. Number 4. Artfish. The next entry on today's list sounds like the brainchild of a burgeoning serial killer, and while many people on today's list have done their best to rescue animals in peril, or at least treat them with dignity, our number 4 entry is the only one where the animals in question were intentionally frozen. In 2016, the Japanese theme park Space World launched a new exhibit. Keeping in line with their space theme, the new exhibit was all about fish. The exhibit was a skating rink, but rather than regular ice, it was ice with the bodies of 5,000 dead fish frozen in it. While the park's general manager insisted that the fish were already deceased at the time they were purchased, the exhibit was met with very negative reactions, with one commenter writing, "You have no soul to plan such an event to begin with." Very soon after the exhibit was opened, it was closed down again, this time for good, with manager Toshimi Takeda saying in a statement, quote, "We are sorry for the project and decided to close the rink." To further express their remorse, the park agrees to hold a religious ceremony to honor the fish. Number 3. Mammoth Discovery. The next entry on today's list is a little bit older, but while finding remains and fossils of prehistoric beasts isn't entirely uncommon, I promise you, this story is something to keep an eye on. In 2012, a group of paleontologists were notified by locals that they had spotted an ear, a tail, and the leg of a woolly mammoth emerging from the thawing permafrost. All things considered, this isn't super uncommon in the region. In fact, so many mammoths have been discovered there that it is the home to a mammoth museum, where some of the best specimens are kept for visitors to get a closer look at. However, what made this particular specimen so impressive was just how well preserved it was. After nearly 28,000 years frozen in ice, scientists found something in the mammoth that they had never had before: blood. Number 2. Coffee cats. This next story involves coffee and kittens, basically everything that matters. In January of 2020, Kendall Dewish was driving to work near Drayton Valley in Alberta, Canada, when he noticed something on the side of the road. As he got out of his vehicle, Kendall knew immediately what he had found. 3 tiny kittens were sitting by the side of the road crying loudly that they had been abandoned the night before, and their tails became frozen in the snow. All 3 cats were simply trapped there, and there's no telling what could have happened had Kendall not come along. He found it easy to free one of the kittens, but the other 2 were firmly frozen in place. That's when he remembered a half-drunk, lukewarm cup of coffee in his truck. He quickly grabbed the coffee and used it to melt the ice. Kendall took the kittens home and posted their pictures and story on Facebook. A short while later, they were adopted into their new home by a friend. Number 1. Refrigigator. Of all the creatures on today's list, most have wound up frozen due to unfortunate chains of circumstance or human help. But our number 1 entry is the only creature that almost freezes to death on purpose. All in all, we don't typically associate alligators with frigid climates. If you try and envision one, it'll probably be in a swamp or walking across rocks. You probably wouldn't imagine an alligator coping well in cold temperatures. But in 2019, as an uncharacteristic cold snap took hold of North Carolina, officials began to notice that the gators of the Charlotte River Swamp Park were prepared. Immediately before the water reached the freezing point, the alligators would stick their nose out of the ice and freeze in place with it. This might sound like a slow and terrible way to freeze to death, but instead, the gators enter a state of brumation, a type of reptile hibernation. During this period, they do not eat and use virtually no energy. That's all for 10 frozen animals stuck in time. Which story was your favorite? Have you heard of similar stories? Let us know in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit the like button and subscribe to TrendJoint for more incredible videos. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.